So I just ordered my food, and I thought of while waiting for it, I can make a video on how I color grade my raw photos on Photoshop. Let's get into it. Some of you may know that a lot of my pictures are taken during the night, and so here's one of it. The first thing I usually do is to check the exposure first. So as you can see, it's kind of dark. That's why I'm gonna pull the exposure a bit higher. I'll give it to 1. And the next thing I do is to check the contrast of the picture. Since it is raw, usually it's a bit flat. And there's 2 ways of doing it. Usually people use the tone curve, which is a very great way to start with, because when you're using a curve, it has a gradient effect to it. So the contrast look less harsh, but I like to just use the highlights and shadow directly. It's up to you. So since it is a darker image, I like to bring out the details a bit more. And there's a way to do it. A lot of people get confused between how highlights and whites and shadows and blacks works with each other. So when you're using shadows, is kind of like the darker color of the image, but it's not completely black. It still has details in it. So if you want more details in your picture, but you still want to keep the contrast, what you do is you pull down the shadow first, right? So you see all the details, and then you put the blacks down. So you bring out more black, and the black, it has no details in it, it's just black. So you can see if you hold Alt option, you can see all of these are the part where it's full black. There's no detail to it. But that's a good way to keep the details, but at the same time have all the contrast that you want. And the same thing goes to highlight. You can bring the highlight down. Oh, my food is here. Wait. Ooh. Sorry. Where was I? The next thing I would do, depending on what kind of mood you're looking for, I would change the color temperature as well. And usually when I'm doing these midnight low light photography, I kind of like this cyberpunk mood. So usually I would make the temperature a bit cooler than it's supposed to be. So I can drag it towards the blue a bit more. So let's go to 3,900. I can get it back later if it doesn't work. So I don't think Camera Raw had this function before, but it's called texture, and I really like it. You can put it to the max. I think you cannot really tell. I mean, it's not that intense even if you put it to 100. But I like to use it a lot because it shows a lot of details. It brings out a lot of details. Yeah, I put it 70, 80. And since usually I upload my pictures on Instagram, so the clarity, you gotta add a bit more clarity to it because of all the compression Instagram has. I'll go to 30, yeah, 30, 31. And also, sometimes with raw images, it gives a little foggy look, and you can use the haze function. It can kind of just remove all this foggy look to it, but I don't really need it right now, I guess. Yeah, I don't need it. Okay, so when you're done with the basic settings, usually what I would do next is I would go to calibration. So a lot of people like this teal and orange look. So if you go to blue primary and just pull it all the way to the left, this is what you always see on Instagram. Everyone uses this. But I don't need it that much. I can just go to 20, 29. Yeah, 30, 30, somewhere there. Just play with it. It's really fun. There's no right or wrong. As long as, there is a thing that I usually use to make sure that I'm not over grading it, is the skin tone. So you don't actually see anyone here, but actually over here, I see the skin of this person, and based on that you can tell if you're overgrading it or not. And so far I don't think it's too much, so get back to it. Oh, before I forgot about it, I usually crop the image as well at the beginning. So if you're uploading on Instagram, you can go to 4 to 5, which is the size of Instagram posts. So I kind of just want to focus on this guy who's biking here, and put him just right here. Kind of want this light here, but never mind. So right here, yeah, I guess it's cool. And if you click P on Photoshop, you can see the before and after. And so far, I think it looks pretty cool. And one thing with low light, the highlight and low light is you might notice a little rough edge with the highlights here. And so you gotta be careful with the highlights sometimes. Like, don't pull it all the way down. Otherwise, it might have a very sharp edge with the glowing light. And now the next thing I would do is I would go to the shadows here that has tints, and based on what kind of look you're looking for, obviously you can just go left or right, but I usually like to have a greener tint to the image, but not that much as well. 15, I think 15 is okay. Sometimes you just gotta go back and forward to look to see if it's going towards the way you want it to be. Yeah, I guess it's fine. I kind of like images that are a bit underexposed, so that's why you might feel like it's a bit dark, but that's just the way that I like it to be. And next thing, which is pretty much the last thing that I would do, is split toning. And if you want your color grading skill to, if you want to bring your color grading skill to the next level, split toning is really important. But at the same time, it's something really dangerous to play with as well, because if you do it wrong, it just looks so bad. Basically, it's just having a color contrast between your highlight and your shadows. And these contrasts can make the image look much more cinematic than it is. So with low light, usually I would make the highlight a bit more blue, because from the street light, I guess, because street lights are always highlights, if that makes sense. So I want the street lights to look a bit more bluish. Once you choose your color, you go to saturation and just pull it up. If you're not happy with the result, you just need to double click it and it will go back to 0. So just keep going back and forth. Why is it not changing? Weird. Oh, it is changing. But it's just that it's too blue. So I think I added too much blue to the image. That's why I couldn't tell the difference. But yeah, I guess there's no point doing the highlight. So for the shadow, obviously, I would put a bit warmer tone to it, so there's the contrast. You see, now you see the difference. You see? Maybe a bit more orange. Yeah, I like it. I like it. Oh no, I don't like it. Wait. Maybe a bit less. But basically that's it. You can see before and after. Before, after. As I said, if you want to make sure that you're not overgrading it, hopefully there's a person in the image to make sure that the skin tone is right. Otherwise, But at the same time, if you're not caring about, because there's no rule to it, so if you like the skin tone to be so off, you still can do it. It's not wrong, but for me, I like this dramatic look in the colors, but at the same time, I want to keep the skin tone normal. So that's the way I do it. But if you don't care about the skin tone, obviously you can go crazy with it. So yeah.